Welcome into Bet the Edge, the college football takeover presented by BetMGM Sportsbook. I'm Brad Thomas here with Eric Froton and Vaughn Delzell. And fellas, we had round one, and my initial takeaway, blowouts will happen, but it was so nice to have something to be excited about. More football is always better, in my opinion. Vaughn, any early takeaways? Any team that looked like they could win the national championship?
I mean, every favorite looked like they could win the national championship. We spoke on it, said it would be a chalky first round more than likely. And, the thought process of a lot of people saying the teams that lost do not deserve to be in, the Indianas, the SMUs. We didn't expect these teams to win the championship. They were 40 to 50 to 61 for a reason. Now we're weaving out the teams that aren't going to win. We'll probably see two more of them. The big dogs this weekend get weaved out as well. But I will say this, Brad. Everything's going as planned for me. We have our brackets out, and I am 4 for 4 with the favorites. And all four of my teams that I have winning this week are favorites again. So chalk, chalk, chalk. How about you, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point. And early on, we saw Indiana get taken out. We saw Clemson lose. And, of course, that embarrassment by SMU at the hands of Penn State, But when it came to Ohio State and it came to Tennessee, we heard the SEC faithful complaining, why didn't we get more teams in? These three teams should have been in with the tough SEC schedule they play. Well, then Tennessee goes to the horseshoe and gets completely embarrassed. It was a clear favorite weekend.
Yeah, I agree. Favorites all around. And the good news for all the other conferences, the non-SEC conferences, that Ohio State is a legitimate national championship contender. They are my favorite to win. I actually picked Oregon to beat them this weekend prior to seeing them over the weekend. But we'll talk about that as we get a little bit deeper. Ohio State looked apart, and they did a favor for everyone who hates the SEC, and they destroyed Tennessee. But let's get into the games because I'm really excited about this first one, mainly because of my future. But Boise State versus Penn State, the Fiesta Bowl in Glendale, Arizona. The Nittany Lions are a 10.5-point favorite, and the total set at 52.5. This is on New Year's Eve at 7:30 p.m. Eric, I'll go straight into you. Do you have any props lined up? I didn't see much of the markets, so if you don't have any props, you can go straight into the game on who you like.
Oh, yeah, I got props, absolutely. But we'll do a quick little cap here for us, too.
Yes.
Penn State coming off that hot opener, 2 taints. Pick sixes to start off the game, 14-0. That's how you like to see things going. Clearly, the pass rush was just in the backfield all day long of SMU. They could not stay in front of Denny Sutton or the great Abdul Carter, projected top 10 NFL draft pick. And defensively, they held SMU to 1.6 yards per carry. I mean, come on now. What more do you want from Penn State? And on the other side, hey, it's Boise they're playing this week, and we know what they like to do. Elite rush offense, ranks 3rd in EPA per rush, 1st in yards after contact. However, part of the run game is the offensive line. And what I'm concerned about here is how Boise State plans to block Penn State. Offensively, they rank 108th in blown run block rate. 11.4% of their run plays have a blown run block. Now, that's okay when you're playing against the Mountain West, but now you're going up against an absolute top 3 elite defense in Penn State. That is a problem because as good as Ashton Genty is, you're going to have to get some blocking up front as well. So that's what I'm concerned about, here when I'm looking at Boise State. It's just, are they going to be able to handle Penn State up front? Now on to the props. Drew Aller. Last week, we got a nice little cash out of him on the rushing. By the way, I went 9-4 last week on the props. Felt good.
Congratulations,
real good
bro.
first
Congratulations.
week. Yeah. But with Aller, I think it's another situation here where I believe Penn State is going to be able to assert themselves on the line. I think they're going to be able to run the ball effectively like they did last game. And I think that means that Drew Aller is not going to have to be airing the ball out quite the way that he has been in some of the other games. Look at the attempts. I'm very curious to see where they set his pass attempts at. But at 225.5 at passing yards, where we have him now, I am leaning under on that. And if we're going with best bet for the game, Katron Allen, 4.5 receiving yards in the early market. Keep in mind, last week he had 36. I believe he had 38 yards receiving, right? Three catches. Had 4 targets the game before that. 6 out of the last 9 games cleared this mark. He only has to catch 1 pass. And in a script where I believe that Penn State will want to be asserting themselves, I love that over 4.5 receiving yards. Give it to me. Best bet on this game for Katron Allen.
Yeah, that's a sharp look for sure. We know that both the running backs did so well for Penn State that they didn't have to throw the ball too. So the under 1.5 passing touchdowns cashed last week too for Penn State. And I think we could run it back there and on that rushing yards prop. Now he got sacked 3 times. Boise State, second in the country in sacks per game, almost 4 per game. Not saying they're going to sack Alar 4 times, but they are going to get to him a few times. So I like the under rushing yards, like the under 1.5 passing touchdowns too, if you can still get that for plus money. But the real prop, and Brad, I'll need you to hit on this too. Ashton Jeanty, over under 135.5 rushing yards is what the line opened up as. I want to be one of the people that take the under. I want to wear the S on my chest.
Wow.
I don't know. It's going to be a tough one, but you figure in this is the toughest line they're going to face all year up against, Oregon early in the season. When they met Oregon, that was not the front 7 that Oregon has now. So I definitely like the situation for unders in this game. And Jeanty, that's a high number. It's high.
I'll just say this about Jeanty. The scary thing about taking the under 135.5 is because they're going to hand him the ball 25 to 30 times in the game. You would need one of those early first half, 20-point leads from Penn State for them to even shy away from it later in the game. I like Penn State in this game. My original plan for this game, since I'm on Penn State to make it to the semifinals, was going to be to take Boise State plus the 11.5. The hypothetical line that came out last week before the games, you could find it anywhere 11.5 to 13.5. I just can't get down with it. I genuinely believe that this Penn State defensive line will be able to get into the backfield. So Eric touched on how many blown first blocks and how many yards before first contact there were for Boise State. It kind of inflated the Ashton Jeanty numbers when we're like, Ashton Jeanty has the most forced missed tackles in college football by a margin of almost 50 to the next closest guy. That's because he was asked to do a lot. I actually think that this Penn State team will be able to, stopping the run is not letting Ashton Jeanty run for 150 yards, right? If he eclipses the 100 mark and gets to 120, 125, you've done your job because that offense is so driven by the success of Ashton Jeanty. Yes, Matson can have some success through the air when you're stacking the box, but I literally think Penn State's going to not have to show too many stacked boxes in this game because their defensive line is just really, really talented. Eric touched on Abdul Carter. That man was in the backfield every single time. If Penn State get the lead here, right, they get a substantial lead and it's a pass script for Boise State, I don't think their offensive line is going to be able to hold up with the pass rush. And that's what really scares me about if anybody's pro Boise State in this game, you need it to be close late because I don't see Boise State chipping away at a big lead. So my lead for this game is Penn State minus 10.5. But since we already have the 3.5 units on Penn State to make it to the semifinals, I'm not going to place any action on that. I haven't got to the prop market yet. I'm going to wait and see what the lines settle at. Eric posted a really good, interesting video last week about Katron Allen's rushing attempts. When he posted that, I went with full confidence, and I bet Nick Singleton and Katron Allen both to go over their rushing prop. They both cashed, and I think it's another situation where both are going to get ample carries and ample opportunities for both of them to go over. So that's kind of where my head's at. Eric, before we go to the next game, go ahead and give your best bets again, and then Vaughn follow up.
Yeah, I like that Katron Allen over 4.5 receiving yards. That's going to be my best bet for this game. But, to kind of color what you were talking about with Boise State, keep in mind, they've had major issues containing big plays this season. 128th in ISO PPP, 128th as well in yards per successful play, and 126th in marginal explosiveness allowed. Not a good thing for us when we're projecting Jeanty. If Penn State can go out and hit a couple of big plays, get up early and flip that script, that could be a difficult situation for Boise State. I don't know how they come back. They don't have an explosive passing offense behind Maddox Madsen. And a good comp actually for is you mentioned the Oregon game for Boise State, which is the only real big-time team they played that's comparable. Madsen, 17 for 40 passing attempts. Only completed 17 of them for 148 yards. That doesn't give me any confidence if they get behind.
Yeah, Penn State certainly won't be getting all those interceptions to start the game because Boise State will like to establish the run. But as we spoke on, Penn State's going to be ready for that run defense. So I like Jeanty under the 135.5 rushing yards for his total, a number that he's gone under only 2 times this season. So it's going to be, I think, a great one. And Penn State covers and wins this game too.
Penn State covers and wins. That's where I'm leaning as well. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, Atlanta, Georgia, Arizona State versus Texas. The Longhorns are a 13.5-point favorite. Total set at 52.5. This is on New Year's Day at 1 p.m. And I will kick things off. I didn't go with this play here, but I'm so close to locking it in. And that's Arizona State. First half plus 7.5. It's minus 115. Arizona State, I look at their schedule and I'm like, they ended the season so strong. They were such a really talented team. Scadaboo kind of felt slighted by not being a Heisman finalist, and he kind of carried that team. I think they have to hang around early, and I think they lean on Scadaboo. When you minimize possessions there, it really helps cover those bigger numbers, those 2-score numbers. When we saw Quinn Ewers play last week, I thought he played solid, but he did miss a lot of passes. And all you need is one drive for Texas that, where they're forced to punt deep in their own territory, and then you get good field position, you capitalize on it. I'm going with Arizona State plus 7.5 in the first half. I think as the game progresses, the size and the speed of that defensive line of Texas A&M does start to wear out Arizona State. But all I have to do is just get them to catch that first half, and then whatever happens in the back end is totally fine. I'll go straight to you, Vaughn. Give me your color on this game.
Yeah, if you do cash Arizona State first half, live bets Texas in the second half. That'd be my angle of attack there. But you got to be careful. So, because we spoke on it last week, and we said it'd be chalky, and I said SMU first quarter is probably the only way I could look at them. They totally just fell apart right off the bat. Yes. Indiana first half would be the only way you could back that team. Or in first quarter, Jeremiah Love 98 yards up the sideline. Eric saw that. So a lot of these dogs are not getting out to good starts in the game. So Arizona State will have to establish the run in order to do that. And if they do establish the run, I think that their quarterback position here, Sam Levitt, under 0.5 passing touchdowns. I don't know if you guys saw that. Plus 168 odds. And I know that might sound crazy, but he's not going to go out there and do what Clemson just did, what Cade Klubnik just did. I mean, Clemson was the first team to have over 350 total yards against Texas all season. And we say Texas hasn't played up to the potential teams that we thought they would strength the schedule-wise, but I do think the defense is all that we've talked about this season. Clemson was at a negative game script where they were just throwing the whole time, especially with Phil Maffa injured right away. So Arizona State will try to establish the run. Since Clemson could not do that, I'm going to fade Arizona State's quarterback, go under 0.5 passing touchdowns for the Spice at plus 168.
Yeah, man. Speaking of Texas, man, that last week, Clemson, Texas was a golden cap for us. I think I hit every single bet in that game.
Yeah,
Antonio Williams, Cade Klubnik, Trey Wisner. It was a wonderful cap. But here we are against Arizona State, and keep in mind with Texas, 9-4 to the under this year. Kind of surprising. You think about this Texas Longhorns team, you expect, they're probably just blowing teams out, but they're actually average. They're 130th nationally, where they're going under their point per game, their allotted total by 6.3 points per game. So this has been surprising, like a defense-oriented Texas team that when they're up, they're not keeping their foot on the gas. They're slowing it down and salting it out. And that probably only kind of compounds with the fact that they don't have Isaiah Bond. They didn't last game. They probably won't this game, and we'll see. But this hasn't been an explosive Texas offense. Look at last game against Clemson. What did they do? 48 carries for 292 rushing yards. We talked about it. That Clemson defense, one of the top 10 in terms of allowing explosive plays, and that's exactly what they did, 77-yarder out of Jaden Blue. But with Ewers, he went way under his 265. He only went for 202 passing yards, right?
Yep.
I sincerely believe if Texas can impose their will, they will continue to do so on the ground. And against Arizona State, 11-2 against the spread quietly this year. I mean, that's as good as it gets. You're not going to get any better than that. 8-5 to the over. So they're kind of on the other side of here from Texas. Now, defensively, what they do is they suppress explosive plays. 15th in marginal explosiveness, 20th in explosive play rate. And their offense is efficient. 50% success rate. That's 9th in the country, but not explosive at all. 88th in yards per successful play. Keep in mind, Arizona State probably won't have Jordan Tyson, who has, double the receptions and yardage of their next most prolific receiver, and that's Cam Scadaboo. They really don't have a secondary option in the pass game for Arizona State. Now, in terms of what they do well and what they don't do well, they're 104th in tackle success rate, with teams throwing on Arizona State at the 127th most rate in the country, right? Teams are running 127th rate, passing at the 6th most prolific rate in the country. And the reason why is their pass rush stinks. 114th in sacks per dropback, 107th in pressure rate allowed, with no Jordan Tyson, with a leaky offensive line. We saw Texas's defensive line just crushing last game. I actually like the under 52.5 points in this game. I think Texas is able to get up early. I think they're able to shut down a one-dimensional Arizona State offense. I think I will be watching the Quinn Ewers passing yardage once again. If they're going to put it up at 265 again, that simply isn't how I expect Texas to attack this game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I like that cap there. So just real quick, let's go ahead, Vaughn.
They did open Quinn Ewers' passing line, actually.
Oh, they did. I didn't see it.
On FanDuel in the last 10 minutes, 251.5.
Oh, I like the under. I'm going under. I mean, it got down to 255 last game from an open of 265, and he went 202. I think they're going to be able to handle this Arizona State team. I don't know how they move the ball effectively, being so one-dimensional without Tyson. And that means a run script, in my opinion.
Love that.
Okay, so for the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, I'm going to go with Arizona State first half plus the 7.5. Vaughn, you are on Sam Levitt under a half a passing touchdown. And Mr. Eric Froton, you are on Quinn Ewers under 251 passing yards. Let's get a sweep there. I feel like I'm probably going to be the odd man out in that one, but I'm just itching to live bet the game in any capacity. Before we get into the Rose Bowl, I want to let you know the holidays just got merrier with the Premier League festive fixtures on NBC, USA, and streaming on Peacock. Today through January 6th, we're bringing you the greatest gifts, magical moments, and holiday cheer. Don't miss a moment of drama and excitement from the best players in the world. Boys, I love Boxing Day, but I also love the Rose Bowl. It is great that we have this. Oh my God, Oregon versus Ohio State, the rematch. The Buckeyes are 2.5-point favorite. Total set at 53.5, and this is also on January 1st at 5 p.m. Eastern. So I was trying to do some mental math in this game to see, what kind of power rankings adjustments the bookmakers did, right? And they actually rated Ohio State a little bit further down than they did in the first meeting, which is totally understandable, right? Oregon wins the game. Then Oregon goes on to have an undefeated season. So of course, you kind of go down a little bit in the power rankings, but I didn't think that it was all that warranted, right? Like Ohio State, yes, they dropped the egg, they had the drop ball against Michigan, but then they go out there, and my biggest knock on Ohio State when they played against Michigan was Chip Kelly, the arrogance of Chip Kelly really wanting to just run the ball and pound the rock against Michigan and not adapting to the game flow, and then he goes out in his last game and says, you know what? We have these guys, these NFL talent wide receivers, Jeremiah Smith, Mecca Abuka, Carnell Tate. We're getting them the ball. You know what that did? It allowed the game to open up. It didn't allow for any stacked boxes. And then it allowed Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins to get active and flowing in the game. It also helps when the team you're playing can't move the ball in Tennessee. So I don't think it's going to be a one-sided affair. But I was going to be on Oregon. I thought Oregon plus 3.5 was the route I was going to take. I'm actually going to pass on this game. Why? Because I would probably make Oregon a little bit bigger of a dog if Ohio State plays the way they're playing. However, Oregon beat them once. They have the confidence. They can do everything they want on the ground and through the air. I just don't think Ohio State blows this game like they did last, but I just can't get all the way to the 2.5. I think the number is just a little too rich for me to bet. Maybe money line might be the way to go. I think that's the angle that you're taking in this game. Am I correct, Vaughn?
Yeah, I mean, I'm certainly happy that Ohio State was the favorite when they opened up here. That was a situation where it's kind of fishy for some people because these teams already met. Oregon won. Oregon has the bye week. They have the time to prepare for them and know what went right and went wrong. But so does Ohio State. They have the same situation outside the rest advantage here. So in my opinion, I mean, Ohio State did everything correctly against Tennessee. Obviously, the second quarter, you'd like to see them not let them score 10 points, but they absolutely sat on them in the second half like we expected them to. Tennessee with a pity touchdown in the fourth quarter. And I think this Buckeyes offense, too, looked very good. I mean, Will Howard didn't have to force feed anybody, but Jeremiah Smith did everything he had to get us that 100 yards and 2 touchdowns last week. And I certainly think that he can go over his receiving mark in this game as a good prop to target. We'll wait to the latter section to speak on that, but I like the Buckeyes. I said last week I'm ready to rip up my Ohio State ticket, but if they got to Oregon here, I thought that they had a good chance of winning this game. So I'm feeling a little more confident in Ohio State as the week goes on.
I'll say this. Let me just add this one thing. And I wanted to say this earlier in the show, but I wanted to get it out here. I think we're going to see a lot of action just come in on favorites from the betting public as we get through, just because of what happened in last week. And everyone listening, you just have to remember that, all of the favorites had that home field advantage. That's not going to be the case in these bowl games. All right, Eric, undress this game for us.
Yeah, well, fortunately, this game is in Pasadena, so we won't have to deal with any inclement weather like we saw this past weekend between Oregon and Ohio State, which means we should get a fairly offensive, affair like we did last game. As far as Oregon, very efficient offense, top 10 in rush and passing success rate. However, they're not as explosive as you might think. 110th in yards per successful rush, 8.7, and 82nd in yards after contact. And on the other side with the passing game, 81st in pass plays of 20-plus yards and 133rd in air yards per pass, only averaging 6.5 air yards per pass. Is a short, efficient passing offense designed to get the ball in the hands of their playmakers, Tez Johnson, Evan Stewart, so that they can make plays. Now, on the other side, where Oregon can be had defensively, pretty simply on the line. You can run the ball on Oregon. Yards per rush, excluding sacks, they're allowing 5 yards per carry. It's 75th in the country. 81st in yards per successful rush, 89th in EPA per rush. So with Ohio State, Chip Kelly, obviously, we know what they want to do. 9th ranked offense, number 1 defense in SP+. But last game, despite Oregon being fairly vulnerable on the ground, they were behind. They were in a pass script, so they had to do a little bit more of that. Keep in mind, Will Howard, 28 of 35 for 326 last game, 9.3 yards per attempt and a 2-0 ratio. If Ohio State doesn't lose 2 fumbles and Oregon didn't turn the ball over, I think they probably, you could say that they win that game.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's in play. So if they can be a little more conservative with that. Trevion last game rips a 53-yarder. 10 carries, goes for 87 yards. Jeremiah and Book, 9 catches and 10 catches for 90-plus yards and 100-plus yards on each of those two. It was clear what they wanted to do, right? Their top 2 guys. Defensively, though, right? Ohio State allowed 496 total yards to Oregon. And my guy, for the best bet I have coming out, factors deeply into that play. I'll let you guys go before I go with my my best bets and color the rest of this.
Yeah, when I gave out the any player to get 150 plus passing yards, this was the matchup that I absolutely wanted. And I really believe that Oregon will be in a negative game script, passing script. And, there's nobody better for that Oregon team than Mr. Tez Johnson. I think he has a chance to eclipse the 150 passing yard mark. For the best bets for this Rose Bowl game, man, I have to lock something in just for the cameras, right? I'm going to go Ohio State money line. Vaughn, what's your best bet for this game?
Now you're making me nervous. But, Ohio State money line is actually the play for me, too. The one thing that we did see from the Buckeyes that we didn't see against Oregon earlier the year in Michigan was that fight right out the gate in the first quarter. Ohio State came out and lit Tennessee up in SEC school 21-0. And now they're favorites in the line moving out in their favor. Absolutely love that for the Buckeyes. Give me the money line as well.
Love it. I have a few different plays. I will keep my best for the end, but I like Trevion Henderson, who we just mentioned. 47.5 rushing yards he's listed at. That's an exceptional value. You look what he did last game, right? Doesn't need many carries to go and do it. He's splitting with Quinshon Judkins, but Judkins just doesn't have the juice. You see that Trevion, the home run hitting ability he displays week after week. I've been pretty outspoken about how I think Trevion Henderson is the best running back outside of Genty in this draft, and I believe it, over 47.5 rushing yards all day. And then you got Emeka Egbuka currently lined early at 55.5 receiving yards. As discussed, he went over 90 this past game when they played Oregon. In the last game against Tennessee, again, he was rode hard and put away wet. In these big games where they need him, they go to Egbuka. But the big bet of this game, you can throw a ladder on it when they finally give us one. I don't know what they will, but I'm licking my chops at it. Dylan Gabriel, who, as mentioned, 341 yards in the last game, gassed it up. 149 of that went to Evan Stewart. He is currently listed at 246.5 passing yards, only 95 yards less than what he threw for last game, right? That's kind, very reasonable. He's 8-5 against the number this year, but against good teams, he goes over it every time. Michigan, Illinois, Ohio State, Penn State. He's crushing that 246.5 passing yardage number. I'm taking the over, and I'm waiting for those ladders to come out. I think the 300 plus is a good look. As started last game, 325 even. So be on the lookout for those over ladders.
Really interesting to see that they lowered Dylan Gabriel and Travion Henderson from the first game. I think those numbers were opened a little higher in the first game. Wow, that's a good spot by you there. Let's go to the Sugar Bowl. Notre Dame versus Georgia. Bulldogs, 1.5 point favorite. Total set at 44.5. This game, Saturday, 8:45 p.m. in New Orleans. I love New Orleans, guys. And Vaughn, I think we're going to be on opposite sides here. I am going to be on Notre Dame here. And I'm going to take the plus 1.5. I love Notre Dame, but I do have my concerns, right? You know, this is an elite passing defense, and they were on display against Indiana. Secondary was really talented. Defensive line actually was able to get to the quarterback, cause a lot of trouble for Indiana. My concerns is just experience, right? Like, sure, Kirby Smart's going to be without Carson Beck, but he has so much experience to get his guys ready, get his guys motivated, and have his guys play without fear. The biggest issue in this game between whichever team comes out successful, it's going to be the coach that gets them most prepared from the opening whistle, right? These big games between two Goliaths, and I say Goliaths because this is a really good Notre Dame team despite losing to Northern Illinois. We already know what Georgia is, just given their history and their pedigree, is who starts the game on the front foot, who starts the game coming out the traps, playing and establishing themselves. It's not necessarily about the score, right? Sure, the score is going to be great. It's going to be who asserts themselves in the trenches, who's getting pressure on the quarterback, whose offensive line is getting pushed on that front seven, on that defensive line. I think Notre Dame is going to be pretty solid. Marcus Freeman covering at a really high rate. This team has one of the best cover spreads streaks in college football since losing to Northern Illinois. It's been phenomenal. I'm going to talk about Stockton later in the episode here, so I don't want to go too much on my thought process on him. But we'll see what happens with Stockton, right? Stockton is in a peculiar situation because he's not throwing to the best wide receiver core, right? And I think they're going to have to lean on ETN, but we'll see how much they do. I think Notre Dame, if they lose this game, it's going to be a close one. I actually think they beat Georgia. I have them going further in my brackets, and I do like getting the plus 1.5. Let's go straight to you, Eric.
Yeah, we talked about this in the preseason or the pre-playoff recap, which was 9-1 for Notre Dame was pretty darn good odds. All they had to do is get by Indiana, and then you're playing, as we are now, a Georgia team that may not be with their starting quarterback, Carson Beck, right? And that's an issue with Georgia because what do they want to do? They want to throw the ball. One of the heaviest pass scripts in the Power Four, 122nd in standard down run rate, 117th in passing downs run rate. They are leaving the fate of their team in the hands of Carson Beck. But now, Carson Beck, we saw his arm get wrenched earlier in the SEC championship game. We have no idea if he's going to play, and it looks like he's not going to, right? And what does that mean? It means we're going to see Gunnar Stockton. And he's going to have to deal with a Notre Dame defense that ranks top 3 nationally in passing success rate, EPA per dropback, and completion rate, okay? Now, that being said, we have a line on Gunnar Stockton, which is 13.5 rushing yards. I didn't expect that, guys. I didn't know what we were going to get out of our rushing yards here. But keep in mind, This Notre Dame team ranks second in the FBS with a 46.5% pressure rate. 1 out of every 2 times they drop back, you're getting pressure on them. Last game, Gunnar Stockton, just kind of showing up, got sacked twice for 18 yards. Finally, he ended up with 8 carries nominally for 8 yards. But now you're going to go up against this Notre Dame pass rush, and you're going to throw out a guy who hasn't started before in his entire life. I'm going under the 13.5 rushing yards for Gunnar Stockton, because I think that we don't know how he handles the rush. We don't know what his pressure to sack rate is going to look like.
Yep.
And if he can't keep his eyes downfield and he starts getting nervous and scared, it could get bad very quickly for Georgia. So I have to, on principle, take the under 13.5 rushing yards. And frankly, I'm going to go on the other side of that with Travis Etienne. 68.5 rushing yards is what his initial listing is. I'm going over that. And we saw what they wanted to do last game. He ran the ball 17 times for 94 yards against Texas, who I have a great deal of respect for, their front as well. We saw what they did last game to Clemson. They did absolutely nothing on the ground. I'm concerned about what happens here. They're going to have to establish this run game. Etienne, they didn't put Frazier in. They didn't give him that many reps. It was Etienne's game. I think he gets 15 to 20 reps, and that 68.5 rushing yards, I think that he can clear that. I think it's a pretty reasonable line. But my favorite bet, my number one best bet of this game, and I'm going to pair it up with that, Gunnar Stockton. I have questions about the passing acumen. We're going to go with Dylan Bell, wide receiver for Georgia. He's listed at 30.5 receiving yards. Last game, after Beck goes down, he only gets 2 targets, and he didn't catch either of them. The dogs even know. You hear them barking about how obscene this 30.5 receiving yards line is with a backup quarterback against a top 3 secondary in the entire country. No way. Give me under 30.5 receiving yards on Dylan Bell for my best bet in this game.
The dogs are barking because they like the dogs. They're on the Bulldogs. What you mean? But I like Gunnar Stockton. I mean, I watched some of his film this morning, and it's not something I expected to do at 7:30 in the morning. But dude's got wheels. He can move. And I think, getting thrown into a situation his last game out where a quarterback gets injured, he gets thrown in. It's the biggest game of the season. He's not going to look as sharp at all as, you'd want him to. But I think now with extra time to prep, they'll have some plays designed for him to be mobile and get out of the pocket. But I am nervous because Notre Dame has had that pressure all season, like you guys said. And Notre Dame is a team that I believe always comes focused and is well coached with Marcus Freeman, live up to the hype. So I think this will be the closest game. I understand why everyone's taking Notre Dame because I feel like the majority of people aren't going to believe in Connor Stockton, but I think he scores a touchdown. And I'll say he goes over 13.5 rushing yards. And the Georgia Bulldogs win. That's right. That's right. Because you know what? A lot of people I don't care. A lot of people on social media this past week have been dissing a lot of people on NBC saying that we picked Notre Dame because we're company people. And of course, we like Notre Dame because they're a great team. But in this spot, I think everybody is going to like Notre Dame. And I don't want to be a part of that, to be honest with you either. So my pick originally, Texas to beat Penn State in the Natty. I'm sticking with it, gentlemen. Georgia, the Bulldogs, they're beating the Irish.
I'll say this. If there's any coach to get the team ready, it's going to be Mr. Kirby Smart. But, man, Gunner's going to have to put on a performance. Let's talk about our best bets. Just tell me one bet that's your favorite bet for this Sugar Bowl matchup. I'm going Notre Dame plus the 1.5. Eric, what you got?
That was Dylan Bell. I am going under 30.5 receiving yards. Take it to the book.
Bulldogs money line.
All right. Listen, it's a crucial matchup in the nation's capital with NFC playoff implications on Sunday Night Football. Catch the Falcons as they travel north to face Jaden Daniels and the Commanders. Coverage of the matchup begins 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock.
As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See betmgm.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 8778-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Well, it is time for the ladder plays. And I'll say, this week that just passed, every bet that I played without a ladder, their guy went to the ladder, and every ladder that I played did not get to the ladder. I was like the worst kind of prop betting ever. Like I did well, but I left so much money on the table. I'm going to go with mine since we were just talking about this game, and I'm going Gunnar Stockton, and I'm only playing this run. 250 plus passing yards, plus 700. I genuinely believe 100% in my heart of hearts that Georgia will be in the passing script late in the game. This is a team that wants to pass the ball. We saw what Indiana did, right? This is an Indiana team that against Notre Dame was in a really bad script. And they were able to pass the ball late in the game because, that's what happens when you're getting blown out. The defense, they sit a little bit deeper. They're like, okay, fine, you can pass the ball. We're just going to let the clock run out. You're not going to come back and beat us. Gunnar Stockton, we don't know 100% what the game script's going to be, the game flow. When Texas played against Georgia, there was no way in Kirby Smart's mind, he genuinely believed, let's have some packages ready for Gunnar Stockton because Carson Beck is going to get hurt, right? They just rolled out what backup quarterbacks do when they come in emergency situations. Now they have the complement of practice. They'll be able to run their playbook, whatever package they have for Gunnar Stockton. The line is plus 700, guys, right? Like, it's not like I'm saying he's going over 250 yards and I'm paying minus 115. This is just a total speculation on what the game flow could be, could happen. And if he's passing the ball late, it has usually like minimal success early in the game and passing the ball late, plus 700. I've taken worse bets at worse odds.
Wow. I just went over to DraftKings and I have our friend, because obviously it's going to be Dylan Gabriel, as I alluded to, and they have his number up here now. What I found amazing in this is they have Gabriel and Howard. Their ladders are the exact same. So if you go 275 plus on Dylan Gabriel, it's plus 205. If you go 300 plus, it's plus 400. And that is the exact same for 275 and 300 for Will Howard. I think that's crazy. And I'm taking the ladder plus 400 to throw for 300 yards, Dylan Gabriel. You're getting 4-1 money on that? He went for 341 last game? Give it to me.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel was literally outstanding against Ohio State, like one of the best games of his life. So, not to say that he won't have a great game here, but the books are certainly protecting themselves, expecting him to drop off to some degree. I'm going to run it back on a guy that should have cashed Brad's 150 receiving yards last week, but instead he cashed us our ladder of 100 plus. Jeremiah Smith, what a legend! And for 1 second here, I'm going to hat tip myself because Curtis Rourke at the buzzer. Over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Jeremiah Smith, 100 yards and 2 touchdowns. At the buzzer. A terrible bet. It was a terrible bet. So, Brad,
take it.
Yeah, Curtis Rourke in general was a terrible bet last week, and we swept our Curtis Rourke bets. We did not deserve that.
Somehow.
But I like Jeremiah Smith to run it back here. 100 plus yards, plus 235 was the best odds I could find. Wouldn't hate sprinkling a touchdown at plus 100 there. But Gunnar Stockton, rushing touchdown, plus 220. Was something I like to get involved in. So I played those two, and I had a little fun. All right, so I'm just gonna break this down for you guys. I think Eric will like this, and I have breaking news for you, Eric, because someone might play that you mentioned earlier. But I placed a 62-1 touchdown parlay. So $10 wins 620. Touchdown bet guy for each game. Of course, Gunnar Stockton got to.
Of course.
Harrison Wallace of Penn State. I believe Penn State has to be far more active in the passing game right off the bat here to try to establish a lead. So I look Harrison Wallace, Jeremiah Smith, legend, and Isaiah Vaughn from Texas. Welcome back. All right. He's listed on some of these books, Eric. So he might be back. And if he gets back, I like him. So Stockton, Vaughn, Smith, and Wallace were 62-1. Some fun I placed for the week.
Harrison Wallace. Yeah, he was 37.5 last week, and I put him out as an over. He's only 39.5 after comfortably beating that.
Yeah.
And as we discussed, I don't think, Penn State has too much trouble being able to move the ball in this Boise State defense that while they're good on a down and down basis, they are susceptible to explosive plays.
Yeah, and I feel like we'll be talking about Harrison Wallace next week when we do our show again, but I do like his line too early in this one. He had 39, and that was in the first half. Didn't have to touch the ball in the second half, and he had a drop pass there that would have put him over his ending line at 39.5 for last game, which I only know because I had to bet a 39.5 at one book, and I lost by the half yard. So, yeah.
Whoa.
Wow. All right, let's get into some positivity of the People's Parlay. We're gonna hit. I feel it coming. I'll let Eric take the floor since he's Mr. 10-7.
Oh, you're so kind to me. Well, I'll take it. 10-7, feeling good. We're going with Georgia Tech over 27.5 points scored. They're playing Vanderbilt here. And as we know with Vanderbilt, man, they have been pretty good about allowing some fun to happen on their watch. Defensively, 121st in success rate, 126th in efficiency. Not a good 115th in plays of 20-plus yards allowed. That's a real problem against this Georgia Tech team that we saw them against Georgia, their last game, 44-42, brought them right to the end, right to the limit. And then before that, Miami put up 28 points, upset Miami, which threw their season into a tailspin. I don't think they're going to have any problem scoring points against Vanderbilt. I think they blow them out. And at 27.5, I'm going over the team total for the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets.
I like that.
Love it. I'm going with Miami playing in the Pop-Tart Bowl, the only bowl game with an edible trophy and an edible mascot. There's a toaster built into the trophy by the way. Cam Ward talking to Shadur Sanders on FaceTime said he was going to play in this game. For me, that's really exciting. I know they're going to be without Isaiah Horton, right? But Restrepo should be suiting up for this game. Martinez should be suiting up for this game. Playing against an Iowa State team who they've had a solid season, right? But for me, it's the offensive firepower of Miami against the lack thereof. And when I mean lack thereof, it's no knock on Iowa State. They're Rocco Beck's played phenomenal this season, but in comparison to this Miami team, I think this is going to be that moment where the firepower of Miami becomes a showcase, right? There are three really important NFL talents on this Miami team that are the only reason, in my opinion, that they're playing is to boost their draft stock. Cam Ward wants to be QB1. There is no doubt about it. Restrepo got to boost his. Martinez, all these guys really want to boost that. I think they put on a show. They put on a performance. I love their team total, but I'm taking their money line in the People's Parlay.
Let's go. And I need a bounce back pick because Mr. Jeremiah Love completely crushed Indiana first quarter +3 for us.
Oh, my God.
To get the People's Parlay. Yeah, I did not see that one coming, especially after interception by Indiana. What the heck, man?
Yeah,
but anyway,
98 yards.
Yeah, to the house. But that had to be exciting to see in person, Eric. So, I'm not going to cry too much because you don't get to see that very often. But for the final leg of our parlay, I'm going to take the Pitt Panthers money line here. Now, they're 6.5-point favorites. There's some opt-outs for them. And there's only one position that really matters because the head coach, Pat Narduzzi, said at least 90% of our seniors are playing in this bowl game, unlike the Sun Bowl in 2022 for us when everybody left. The only guy that is hurt and might not play, quarterback Eli Holstein, which does matter because the backup, Nate Yarnell, left. But as we know, Nate Yarnell wasn't doing much of anything with this team when he was on the field. So they may have a third-string quarterback, but he's been ready and he's been prepped. I like that for the Pitt Panthers and all their seniors playing. So I like the Pitt Panthers money line as the final leg of our People's Parlay, Brad.
What was that bowl game again? Did you know the name of it? I can't remember.
Their bowl game against Toledo is the Sports Bowl. Game above Sports Bowl.
Yeah.
Not as exciting as the Pop-Tarts Bowl.
The Sports Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty generic.
Well, the People's Parlay this week, $10 plays 42. Georgia Tech over Miami moneyline, Pitt moneyline. Let's get to our best bets, and then we will go and talk about any remaining bets. My best bet, I already talked about it. It's Miami moneyline. And I was close. I was torn between Miami and Colorado over, but Miami is going to take the cake here. I think they win this. It opened around minus 130. It's already to minus 150. Totally fine with me. Go ahead, Vaughn, with your best bet.
3 straight best bet winners. Like I said, we're going to get 7 more now to get above 500
Let's go,
and catch
baby.
you guys. So you guys better be shaking in your boots. I'm coming. 2-0 last week, but I wanted to give us 2 of the bowl games before the college football playoffs. So, of course, to win 7 bets with the shows we have remaining, you got to do a lot more work. Miami Hurricanes, team total over, Brad, 29.5 points.
Yeah.
A situation where they can put up 30 piece on Iowa State. When you look at Iowa State's losses, it's happened once on them already, but in a couple of the games down the stretch of last month, they're allowing 26, 28 points per game, stuff like that. So, Cam Ward, your final game in college, light them up. Show them that you deserve to be in that Heisman race. And then I'm going to take TCU in the first half, minus 6.5. Now, you might say, why are you betting this game? But TCU has a lot of guys that are available for this one against Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns. Louisiana down their starting quarterback, backup quarterback left. Now they're on their 3rd-string quarterback, and this guy hasn't taken any snaps this year. He's a freshman. So I just think that TCU, while they have a decent amount of guys hit the portal, they have enough back to be able to hit this 6.5 number in the first half, probably cover the full game too. So my best bets to keep the streak going, to try and go 5 straight. Hurricanes, team total over 29.5. TCU first half, minus 6.5.
Nice. And you know it with me. I'm going with the Dylan Gabriel over. I'm looking at here. You can get a low of 242.5. I'm seeing. I mean, don't walk. Run to your local sports book for that one. and I feel pretty great about that. So that is my lockdown best bet. Enjoy that win. That's happening.
Love that.
Yeah. Let's go into additional bets. I only have one, and the Alamo Bowl, BYU, Colorado, over 54.5 points. Another showcase where all of these guys are here to play and show off their talent. BYU, I think this is a good measuring stick for them too, playing against Colorado. It's an honor to play in the Alamo Bowl. I think both teams are going to have a lot more players available than unavailable here. Colorado offensively, we know what Shedeur Sanders could do. We know what Travis Hunter. We know what Will Shepard. We know what this offense can do. Defensively, they still have their issues. They also lost some guys in the portal defensively that I thought were pretty important to kind of stopping a team that doesn't stop teams. So I think we see a explosive points that's over 54.5. What about you, Mr. Froton?
I got one more, and this is just an over-under type play because we don't really have a lot of props out right now. You know, some of the games aren't being looked at, but Rutgers and Kansas State, I just can't help but look at this over-under of 51 points and think, how does Rutgers without Mongai move the ball effectively?
Yeah.
I just don't know how that's going to go. Like that's a 51-point game. I think this goes under. I just think you're going to get a Kansas State is not afraid to lean on the ball. I think they'll be able to score, but it won't be, pacing. I like that under 51.
Yeah, I think it's pretty odd that Colorado is now a 5.5-point favorite. Makes me a little scared since they were, basically a pick 'em. It's a lot of movement out on them too. But I like that play as well, Eric, because it's fishy that Kansas State's only laying 6.5 or 7. This half hasn't moved at all. Makes you think there may be some news in the opt-out portal or something coming here for Kansas State, but yeah, it certainly looks like the Wildcats should win that game. Should be an under. Rutgers team total under as well.
I don't understand how Rutgers scores much here.
Yeah,
no, it's going to be.
That's not their MO, and I certainly don't think it's going to be playing up in competition either.
No.
For me, I didn't have any solo game bets right now, waiting on some player props, but I do have 2 futures for some sprinkles that I want to get out here. If you guys want to say hi to Sky the doggy for all those watching.
What up?
One of the Bulldog supporters in the house today. But speaking of the Bulldogs, Georgia versus Ohio State to be the college football final, plus 750, and Texas versus Penn State at plus 500. That is the 2 ways that I see this playing out here. A lot of people are going to want to see the repeats, the Texas versus Georgia. I don't think we're getting that, these type of situations here. And I think that was specifically designed by this brackets here too, by the College Football Playoff Committee. So just 2 long shots I like to finish this up here. Plus 500 for Texas versus Penn State and plus 750 for Georgia versus Ohio State to be the college football finalists in the national championship.
I like it, and I love it. Boys, this was fun, as always. Anybody watching, thank you for watching us on our YouTube channel. And if you listen to a podcast forum, don't forget to rate and subscribe us. Man, go to NBCSports.com for more help with your wagers. For Eric Froton and Vaughn Delzell, I'm Brad Thomas. Happy holidays and enjoy the games.